Hello everybody. In today's video, I'm going to acknowledge the toxic side of the IRL maxing communities, plural, excuse me. There are many communities in the IRL maxing space. If you don't know what IRL maxing is, basically it's a movement that started in the 2020s. I'm the founder of, the movement, because IRL maxing prior to this, basically it just meant not necessarily being offline, but back then it just meant IRL streaming, that's basically what it meant. It didn't mean what it means now. IRL maxing is very different than IRL pill, okay? Because the IRL pill, or the blue pill as it was also known, was, just live streaming, It was just another form of live streaming where you went off and you did stupid stuff like Johnny Somali or whatever. But yeah, it was very stupid. And then eventually the whole maxing thing started to go mainstream, especially recently. And then I think it was because of looks maxing and things like that. And because maxing, the word pill got switched out for the word maxing, now instead of everything being a pill thing, it's a maxing thing. At least that's what it's currently. But eventually it is slowly switching to coded. For some reason it's going to pill, to maxing, to coded. So I guess I'm IRL coded. I don't know how to say it. But basically, I want you to be able to get bored. I want you to be able to experience real life. And at first, when you get used to IRL maxing, it's going to hurt like a bitch. And there are people who don't know how to react to it well. And a lot of people on the toxic side of my community, or communities, excuse me, again, plural, they tend to, how should I say, basically they're more chronically online than your average chronically online individual, where they basically use their real life as a way to just be more chronically online. And if they are, consistently offline, they're still a nasty person, because if you don't acknowledge the bad side of it, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, especially in certain IRL maxing communities. There are many different types. There's no one IRL maxing community, because it's usually hyper-localized. And when I mean hyper-localized, I mean hyper-localized in real life, okay? I mean where you physically currently are, alright? That's what I mean by that. And, look, I'm not saying that all IRL maxers are bad people. Obviously, that's not the majority, but it is an issue we do have to acknowledge, okay? Alright? I'm the guy who founded this movement, I'm the person who did that. So everything my community does is not necessarily, or communities in this case, does not necessarily mean I'm responsible for their actions, You have to take responsibility for your own actions. If you did something bad, if you know you did something bad, I would say generally try to take responsibility, Because if you don't learn to take responsibility, especially if you're a, say a woman. Now, I'm not saying that men don't have to take responsibility. They obviously should, and they know that. That's a big thing. It's just, for women, when it comes to the IRL maxing community, it's a lot harder for them to take responsibility, because the internet like gets to their head more than men's often do for some reason, even though they're, you know, maybe in a relationship, maybe having a normal life, but they're like so brain rotted from being online sometimes that like it's genuinely hard for them to have empathy sometimes, or it's hard for them to like just in general have responsibility or be responsible because they're so used to just not doing much, you know, not putting much effort because they're doing is just scroll, 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 scroll in their head, you know. But don't get me wrong, there's incels too. We have to acknowledge the men as well. You know, that's obviously a problem. We, you know, very much acknowledge it. It's just the weird thing is when a man is responsible for doing something and they acknowledge it, regardless if they acknowledge it, a lot of women tend to blame the man. But when it's actually their responsibility, they still blame the man, you know? Especially in straight relationships. Not so much lesbian or gay relationships because, well, you're the same gender, so there's no reflection for them, you know? But again, I'm not trying to say every single woman in the communities of IRL maxing are these hard-headed people, but it's generally like beginners or like people who like they'll quit on day one, you know? Like just because you think you're done now doesn't mean you should stop, you know? And again, it's gonna hurt like a bitch. It's gonna really, really hurt when you feel it. Like it's gonna feel like it at first, but then you realize, hey, I got through it. You know, I accomplished myself. I got offline. You know? And unfortunately, certain people with short attention spans probably won't be able to see this video as much because, well, videos that are, generally speaking, longer are not in there, you know? And it's like, when you're online or when you're doing anything in real life as well, do you actually remember what you're doing? Like, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree or whatever it is, do you actually remember what you're doing? If you ask me, if you're online a lot, do stuff that is not just, you know, watch stuff that is not just like watchable or entertaining, but stuff that you're going to remember and is worth remembering. Okay? Even if it's something you absolutely like hate and disagree with, is it still worth remembering? You know what I mean? Like, is it still worth to remember? But, you know, it's very, very hard because people are just so used to being online all the time. You know? Like, I've helped people who are more chronically online than your average person in 2022. And 2022, I would say, would be the height of normalizing chronically online. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a big, big issue. It's just not as much of an issue as it used to be, say, in 2022, which was, I would say, the height of that time period. The height of being chronically online, you know? But I've gotten people to start doing IRL maxing to just live in real life in general. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, you have to do these chores, oh, you have to do these things. It can simply just be not needing to be on your phone every time you get bored, not needing you need to get on technology or a tablet or a computer, you know, not needing to get on things to do stuff. You know, it can just start with that. Not needing to feel to grab your phone anytime you feel uncomfortable. You know? not needing to grab your phone anytime anything feels slightly off, you know? And again, at first, it's gonna feel really bad when you're not used to it. It's gonna feel just horrible. Like it's gonna feel the worst thing you've ever felt in your life. But if you let it, it will eventually slowly feel less and less dangerous. You know, like I've gotten people off the IRL movement, and it's a lot easier to get men off of the internet than women for some reason. And like I said earlier, it basically has to do with the whole trying to take responsibility thing, especially if they're chronically online. And again, I'm not trying to say all women are like this. I am simply trying to say that because for whatever reason, women tend to be more addicted to the internet than men, it's a lot harder to get them offline. Like, the most you're gonna get, like, extreme is, like, a guy who, he's on the internet for, like, half a day, you know? Half a day, and he goes to bed at, like, 4 a.m., you know? Like, that's the most extreme you usually get. Not always. There are more extremes, but that's what it usually is for men who are chronically online. Whereas women, I'm dealing with people who have like 30-hour screen streaks, like screen time streaks. I'm not kidding you. Like they literally have like 30, like 30 hours, 48 minutes and 26 seconds of screen time. You know? And they're like sleeping for like 2-3 hours, maybe 4 if they're lucky, you know? And again, don't get me wrong, men still have it just as much as women do, but the thing is when it comes to the most extreme, usually women go full in, you know? They're usually more likely to stay online, whereas guys, they usually just hit whatever their maximum is. You know, like they'll probably find out their maximum. And the thing is I'm not saying that they're any better, okay? It's just more of like comparing, one piece of like a rotten sandwich to another piece of rotten sandwich that's slightly less rotten than the other one, Like, you're not exactly winning anything. Now, I'm not saying you have to be rotten to do IRL maxing, okay? Like, IRL maxing didn't necessarily exist prior to the internet because what it basically means is, you only really type of do IRL maxing if you're somebody who's like trying to stay away from being chronically online. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to live in real life more. I would say instead of letting your online life be your real life, let your real life be your real life, and let your online life just be a digital version of your real one, Or give them an idea of what it's like, rather than, making your entire lifetime on the internet. And it's really, really hard because, a lot of these people do eventually get better. They do eventually, become IRL maxers and live in real life. But it takes them a really long time. You're not gonna be able to be like an instant IRL maxer day one. Like for some people, it takes years. you know? And in one rare case, with a friend of mine, and when I started this movement especially, eventually it took him like a decade or so, a decade or two, before I was even born, before the whole IRL maxing was even a thing. He was still trying to get offline, but it was so hard for him because he was so addicted to the internet, you know? But for most people, it's usually several months or several years before, like, especially if they're really, really addicted to the internet, before they really start to kick in with the IRL maxing, you know? And I've only really, like, officially, as in terms of, uh, like, making it an online thing, the IRL movement. Now, it's kind of been a thing for some years now, offline, but, like even I had a time where I was super chronically online, you know? Like, that's right, the guy who was part of the IRL movement was also someone who was chronically online, and I'm still to an extent, but it's just like basically in order to get people offline, you have to be online to get them offline, if that makes sense for these kind of people, because, well, if you want to get their attention, you have to be where they are, which is, well, online. So, there's that. Well, anyway, a simple starter pack or a simple starter to get into, the IRL movement is, one, make your own community in real life. I can't tell you how to do that because, well, you're going to need to figure that out on your own because that's kind of the whole point. And two, just be used to being in the real world, I want you to think for yourself. So regardless of how much you agree or disagree with whatever I said in this video, I still want you to think for yourself. Okay? On any topic, not just what I said, on anything really. Start thinking about things, start doing things, maybe even talk more, if that's, the thing you need to be doing. But generally speaking, just get used to being offline, to being in real life, that kind of thing. And again, at first, like I said many times, and I know I sound like a broken record, it's gonna hurt, okay? It's gonna feel really bad, okay? It's going to be the worst feeling you've ever felt in a long time, or ever, or in your just entire life, at first. But then you'll slowly, over the course of many, maybe many days, weeks, months, years, as you get used to it, possibly decades, depending on who you are, well, eventually you'll move on. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that it would take you months or decades to really get, into the IRL community, or many IRL communities, excuse me. But the first thing you gotta do is not just think for yourself, but just live in real life, okay? That's all that I'm saying. That's all I want you to do. I think you get the idea now. Live in real life and just do that, alright? Use your online life as optional, okay? It's always optional for you to be online. You didn't have to watch this video, okay? You chose to watch this video, not me, alright? I'm simply the one who posted it online, okay? I don't want you being like those toxic people who don't, handle things well. But again, it's your option. If you want to be chronically online all the time, that's up to you. That is up to you. Okay? It was always optional, by the way, for you to be offline or online or whatever. Always. I'm just simply letting you acknowledge it. Okay? Letting you acknowledge it more, so to speak. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you have any opinions or thoughts or ideas, or maybe even something unrelated, that's up to you. But still, I got that toxic side of the community. It is a big issue, and yeah, I have to acknowledge this as well, because if I don't, well, it could always get worse. Or maybe not. It could get better. But I can only convince you for so long. I can only tell you, hey, do this, do that, and whatever. But you are the one who can truly convince yourself. So, unless you're truly willing to do it, it's really all up to you. There's nothing I can really do about it, So, it's all in your head. Just remember that. Okay? It was always optional. Everything was always optional. You might not think you have free will, but in this case, you do. So, all I'm saying is choose it wisely. Now, I'm going to wrap this video up. So, yeah, that's the end of this video. So, I shall see you later. Or maybe not. I don't know. Anyways, bye.